Parshas Shmini. This parsha begins with Moshe's charging Aaron and Aaron's children, the Kohanim, to bring certain korbanos to kick off the service in the Beis Hamikdash, in the Mishkan, in the tabernacle. We're on Perek Tes, and let's say Pasuk Yud. Pasuk Beis. So the second verse in this parsha reads as follows: Take for yourself a calf for a korban chatos. So this is evokes another egel with which Aaron was connected, the egel hazahav. And we learned that Aaron had attempted to co-opt the drive on the part of the Bnei Israel, the children of Israel, who out of some notion of fear or frustration that Moshe was abandoning them or was not going to return, so they decided instead to make a different icon, which was the Egel Hazav, the golden calf. And Aaron was instrumental in it. He didn't want it to happen, we are taught, but he participated nevertheless, hoping that he would be able to deflate the drive and somehow would be able to prevent the Bnei Israel, the children of Israel, from making this golden calf. But he was not successful. And so he's tainted. He was a good man. He was a tzaddik gomor. The Meforshim say that the only taint he had was his participation in this Egel Hazav. So Moshe tells him, at the behest of the Almighty, Moshe tells him, Kach lecha egel ben bokar lechatos. Take for yourself an egel, the son, a calf descended of bull or oxen. So the Meforshim say, and Rashi says, why specifically an egel? And there are others as well. There's an ayla olah, and there's a ram for a korban olah, which is completely consumed, but a chatas is a sin offering. And Rashi says, L'hodia shekiper lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu al yidei egel zeh al maisa egel she'asa. So first of all, this is to tell you, says Rashi, that he achieved atonement for the egel. Kadosh Baruch Hu is giving him an opportunity here, which is reflective of atonement. If you can bring a korban chatas, then you get kapara, you get atonement for your sin. So Aaron completes the cycle of, let's say, tshuva by bringing the korban chatas. Now we're going to skip a few more psukim, and we're going to go to Pasuk Zayin. This is verse 7. Vayomer Moshe el Aaron, krav el mizbeach. Moshe said to Aaron, come close, approach the altar. And make your chatas, your chatas offering, and your olah offering, your sin offering, and your olah offering, which is completely consumed. And achieve through these korbanos, through these offerings, forgiveness for yourself and for the people. We'll skip over the rest of this. And now the question is, and this is not explicitly asked by Rashi, but it is answered by Rashi, and the Meforshei Rashi say that what's bothering Rashi is why the words krav el hamizbeach, come close to the altar, approach the altar. Why does he have to say that? Could have simply said Vayomer Moshe el Aaron, skipping the words krav el hamizbeach, aseyes chatos v'asalasecha. Do your korbanos, do your chatos, do your olah. What do we need Moshe Rabbeinu to say krav el hamizbeach, approach the altar? Where else is he going to do the korbanos? So Rashi says krav el hamizbeach shahaya Aaron bosh. Aaron was embarrassed. V'yorei lageshes, and he was fearful of approaching. Amar la Moshe, lama tabosh? Why are you embarrassed? L'kachtem v'charta. For this you were chosen. Now this phrasing of Rashi is somewhat enigmatic. He doesn't expressly state the question about these extra words, but he does explain what they mean. In other words, why is Moshe encouraging Aaron to approach the altar, to come close to the Mizbeach? Because Aaron was hesitant. He didn't want to go. He was embarrassed. What was he embarrassed about? So the Meforshei Rashi say that he carried this scar, this trauma of having violated God's will. Even if it was inadvertent, and even if his participation was not in rebellion the way it was with the other Jews, but nevertheless he felt guilty, and he was embarrassed to approach. And Moshe says, L'kach nevcharta. This is your job. You were chosen to be the Kohen Gadol. You can't be embarrassed. Hages daitcha, according to the Mefarshim. Focus. Get your mind strong. Put up a barrier to those thoughts and get going. Now the question is, this language of Rashi, L'kach nevcharta, lama tabosh, L'kach nevcharta. Why are you embarrassed? This is why you're chosen. What's the this? L'kach nevcharta. For this reason you were chosen. So there are a few explanations about this, and they all revolve around a similar theme. First of all, some suggest that L'kach nevcharta means you were specifically chosen because you were hesitant. In other words, clearly Aaron wasn't power hungry. He wasn't jumping into the service because it was all about him, because he could be the center of attention. In fact, he was reluctant. He was a reluctant Kohen Gadol. So that attribute of reluctance, we might even say anivus, of humility, qualified him, according to this. In the Shaarei Aharon suggests a different explanation. Shaarei Aharon suggests that Aaron was chosen specifically because he had some measure of taint, because he had some defect. Now, why would that be? Why do we specifically want somebody who has a defect? So listen to this Gemara in Yoma. This is Gemara on Chav Beis Amud Beis, on 22b. Amar Yehuda Amar Shmuel. Mipnei ma lo nimshcha malchus beis Shaul. Why did not the kingdom of Shaul, last? It ended with him. There was no continuation within his lineage. Because there was no defect. Shaul had no defect. In other words, he came from a perfectly clean lineage. He had no skeletons in his closet. He had nothing that anybody could peg anything on. And as a result, his kingdom didn't last. His kingship didn't last. What does this mean? So let's continue. The Amar Rabbi Yochanan Mishum Reb Shimon ben Yotzadak. Rabbi Yochanan says, now he deduces a general rule. Ein ma'amidim parnas ala tzibur, ela imkein kuba shel shrotzim tuluya lo me'achrov. Shim tezuch daito olav, amrim lo chazor la'acharecha. Says, we do not appoint a leader over the community unless he has a box of bugs, of creepy things hanging from his neck. That in case he exhibits haughtiness, a haughty attitude, so then people can say, turn around and look at what you have. The modern expression would be skeletons in your closet. You're not so perfect. And according to this explanation, Aaron was chosen because he had this, albeit minor, but he had this defect. And as a result, he would not get exceedingly haughty. He wouldn't get haughty. Or at least it was likely that he wouldn't get haughty. There is another possible explanation, which is that the job of the Kohen Gadol, and all the Kohanim, but specifically Kohen Gadol, is through the service in the Beis HaMikdash and in the Mishkan, is to achieve kapar, to achieve atonement for the sins of the Bnei Yisrael. If a person himself has not sinned, it's very difficult to have empathy for others who have. But if somebody is subject to the same temptations and grapples with the same temptations as the people for whom you were seeking atonement, and you've dealt with them, and you feel the pain, and you carry it with you. In fact, they say that when Aaron first saw the Mizbeach, the altar has karnayim. There's karnos hamizbeach. It has horns. And it reminded him of the egel. Clearly, he's carrying this around with him because he looks at the Mizbeach, and it reminds him of the egel. He looks at an altar, an inanimate thing, but the tzura, the form, is just, it penetrates his consciousness. And it arouses this feeling of guilt. And it's someone like this, perhaps, says Moshe Rabbeinu, L'kach nivcharta. You were chosen because you carry this bucket of bugs with you, because you carry this post-sin trauma that you really want to cleanse yourself. And if you know what it's like to grapple with sin, and you know what it's like to want to cleanse yourself, then you are the perfect agent, you are the perfect shliach for the rest of Klal Yisrael, who also want to cleanse themselves of their sins. Have a good Shabbos.